to
Okay.
us in today, and I have a screen share. Adria, I found something that has the transliteration next to the translation, which I think explains a little better what the song is, but do you want to introduce that?
Harold, hold on just a second. I just want to explain to Harold. I do now have email on my phone. That got fixed. I don't yet have email on the computer. That's why. So, go ahead.
Sorry. Now, is Cantor Nemi with us today?
Yes, I saw him come in.
Because he's the one that mentioned this yesterday. It's a piece by Yonatan Ratzel, and I believe the verses are taken from Genesis and Psalm 86. Am I right, Rabbi? Cantor Nemi?
Yes. At least the first verse there is the part from the prayer that Jacob in the Bible recited before he met with the unnamed Ish that he wrestled with, before he was then reconciled with Esau.
Okay, and after I was curious about it after Cantor Nemi mentioned it, so I did a little investigation and I found a transcription of it, so I will play through the first chorus of it with the introduction.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Adria.
Well, thank you to Cantor Nemi for introducing us to that.
Wow, thank you so much.
This composer has his own YouTube channel and website, and everything is beautifully produced, high production values, if you're interested.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And I saw on, there were a couple of postings on our Facebook page of other settings for Psalm 27. Keep doing that if you come across any of them that you want to just share. Either you don't have to love something to share it. You have to say it might be interesting to see all the different kinds of settings. And I think that's part of what Cantor Nemi has introduced to us. The point is not that you will respond to every single one, but to see the range that exists and the ways that different composers have chosen to set them, which is going to be different than the psalmodry, the kind of the chanting of the Psalms. But we're going to go back to Psalm 27 today. And I know that we didn't really finish. There was so much from Thursday's class about early rabbinic Judaism and early Christianity. I just sent Harold a link to a fantastic free course from Yale. Some of the universities are providing free courses, which I really love. I particularly love the Yale ones, and they're really high level. This is a fantastic course that I listened to last year, which is an introduction to the New Testament. And it has a couple of lectures. You could just listen to it or you could watch it. You don't have to do any of the readings. But for those who are interested in more study about the New Testament and about the early years of Jesus and of the relationship of Jesus to the apostles, to the early church, very interesting. It's a study academically, and he makes clear in the beginning of his lectures that he's not teaching it theologically or for religious purposes. And one could say the same thing about a course in the Jewish Bible. But if anybody's interested, it's a fantastic, and it's really enjoyable to learn something new, and he's very, very accessible. He has two lectures early in the series of lectures, one that talks about the Greco-Roman world of Jesus and one of the Jewish world of Jesus. So it's kind of a set, you know, it's only one lecture on each of those. So it's a very introductory level, but it's for those of us who are interested, it's really enjoyable, not hard work. And you could just let it wash over you and pick up what you can. But it's a terrific, it's free. And Yale has a whole section on their website of open courses. And this is one of them. And there's also, I can highly recommend David Blight, who is the great scholar of African American history. And he just published a massive biography of Frederick Douglass. His lectures on the Civil War, which is different than the topic of for today and for us, are life-changing. Every American should listen to his course about the Civil War. A third of the class is pre-Civil War, a third of the class is the Civil War itself, and then a third of the class is the Reconstruction afterwards. So that's an example. It's for free on the, you don't have to do any of the reading. You could see the whole syllabus, or you could just listen to the lectures. I just listen to the lectures because it's fun. I don't want homework for that. I just want to enjoy listening to lectures, which I enjoy like I like podcasts. But anyway, there are several great courses on the Yale Open course. You could either go through your podcast or you could go through Yale's website. But I sent to Harold the link for the
up in chat.
Great. So that's the link for the New Testament class. Whoops, I got to turn off my phone. Sorry. Okay, so, but we'll get back to those questions that were raised about that I love, and we'll make time always because we're in the slow food version of studying text. It's really important to learn the things that around support it and inform it. So let's go back to Psalm 27 as we are in Elul.
If I could just have a second about dedicating study.
Yes, hold on. Let me start with that, Harold. I apologize.
No. I know that from time to time we've dedicated study.
Yes, we've very early in the study together, I've talked about the deeply Jewish task, whenever you sit down to study alone or in a class, to think about somebody in whose memory you study. You can do it in honor too. It's more traditional to do it in memory of somebody. And that person gets the zechut, gets the merit of your studying, and it's a way of dedicating your study in a certain way. And I've invited Harold to speak to us today about his brother, in whose memory we will dedicate today's study. So Harold, would you please say a few words?
My brother Matthew was my youngest brother, 8 years younger than I. He was a wonderful guy, a lot smarter than me. He was diagnosed with Hodgkin's disease when he was 16. So he really heroically battled it through high school and college with several different rounds of remission and then relapse. And he passed away in December of his junior year at Yale, where he was a physics major. So this is not his yahrzeit, but today would have been his 55th birthday, as I realized when I woke up this morning. It's hard to believe. I wonder sometimes who the man would have been that he became. And I always think of him this time of year because today is his birthday, and also it is the changing of the seasons and the beginning of the school year. And he was an amazing student, and for his whole life, he was a student. So I am dedicating my study today to the memory of my brother, Matthew Levine.
Thank you.
I'm sure that there are other people who would like to dedicate their study too, and I'm seeing them in chat.
Beautiful. We carry his memory with us today as we study this psalm.
Thank you, Rabbi.
And may you be surrounded by the love of friends and community as you carry that burden of loss. So let's go to Psalm 27. And just to remind us, we finished verse 4, but I'm just going to read them through. Would somebody like to read them in Hebrew?
Can I volunteer Yael Bat Chava if she's here?
If she is here.
I am here.
Would you read through, let's just read through 4 or 5, and then we'll start studying with 5.
So 1 to 5.
Yes, please.
לדוד, אדוני אורי וישעי ממי אירא, אדוני מעוז חיי ממי אפחד. בקרוב עלי מרעים לאכול את בשרי, צרי ואויבי לי, המה חשלו ונפלו.
אם תחנה עליי מחנה לא יירא ליבי, אם תקום עליי מלחמה, בזאת אני בוטח. אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני אותה אבקש, שבתי בבית אדוני כל ימי חיי, לחזות בנועם אדוני ולבקר בהיכלו. כי יצפנני בסוכו, ביום רעה יסתירני, בסתר אוהלו, בצור ירוממני.
Thank you, Yael. So remember, one of the questions we always ask when we confront a psalm is, who is the speaker? What are the circumstances in their life that would evoke the energy, the emotion, the perspective of the psalm? And it's really obvious, and sometimes it's not. Just keep that in mind as we think about this psalm. So first of all, as I said before, there's a lot, as you heard in the reading of it, and you see in the language of it, which is different in the English than in the Hebrew, but it's still obvious in the English, that this is personal. It's not collective, and it's not third person. In other words, not about somebody else, which some psalms are. It's very much, and in Hebrew, because of the suffix of the first person suffix, E, it sounds very, you can hear the rhythm, and the rhythm of this psalm is personal because of so much E in it. And E meaning the ending, the suffix that makes it mine or me or I. So that's very present. So of course we have it in the English, but in English we have I and me and mine, and they're all different words. So it doesn't have quite the same poetic rhythm that the Hebrew has, just as the music of it. Do you know what I mean? So the meaning, of course, I could use the word me and grant me the protection. And one thing I ask, I seek to all the days of my life. But all of those in Hebrew are the same sound. And so there is a kind of a, you know, like the opening of Music Man with the, on this train, you know, and the rhythm. That's kind of like the rhythm of this psalm with but the rhythm is all about me. But it's very personal because we're talking to God and about God. So it's not a selfish rhythm, but there's a very personal sense of the of the rhythm of it. So 5. And we are, as everybody, and for those who are new, after we review the basic Hebrew, which is what we're doing now, and basic understanding, we'll go back and look at all different interpretations and ways to understand it. But we want to get the architecture first. So ki, which can mean a lot of different things in Hebrew: because, for, as a result of, or something like that. It's a conjunctive in the sense of it has a sense of as a result of, or because, or notice this translator doesn't even try to translate it, but it's Yitzbeneni. By the way, I think I referred to this verse somewhere when I was teaching this, that our former intern, Rabbi Mikey Goldstein, who's an Israeli rabbi in Rehovot, outside of Tel Aviv in Jerusalem, he's a conservative rabbi. He once gave a drash at CBST all about this verse. And it has, like I've said, things layer on. And now every time I read the Psalm, which is every day, of course, during this season, I think about his drash about this verse. And he talked about when he was a teenager, an Orthodox teenager in England, and in a very traditional conservative family, and he knew he was gay, but he was terrified of it, and terrified of telling his family, and terrified what it would mean for his Jewish community, and terrified. This line for him meant God was going to protect him, that he felt like this line protected him. He just loved this, he will shelter me. Besuko here. So this is where I mentioned in the beginning that some people see Ori as being Rosh Hashanah, Ishi being Yom Kippur, and here's another reference to the season. But a sukkah is a shelter. So this is the word that we have for the holiday of Sukkot. Sukkot is the plural. So here it's a besuko, in his covering, which is why the translator here used pavilion. So I will be sheltered in his covering, b'yom ra'ah. In the day of ra'ah, we've seen this a lot, right? The word for evil or bad. Often we've seen it referring to a person. In this case, b'yom ra'ah, on a bad day, I will feel protected by the covering of God. Yastireni. Now this is beautiful, that I will be hidden a little bit. I will be, samech taf resh is the shoresh of that is to be hidden. The Hebrew name Esther is like from Esther from the story of Purim, means hidden. So it's a very beautiful thing that sometimes what I need from God is to hide me. This is how Mikey talked about it, that he felt like God's hiding him would protect him from the bad things that would happen if his family found out he was gay. And that the hiddenness of being in the closet was known by God, was protected, like the closet. So the sense of being hidden was safety for him, and that God was part of that hiddenness, which is a very beautiful, beautiful. So it's not that he's unknown to God. God knows who he is. God loves him, but God's helping him stay in the hiding a little bit. It was a very beautiful drash. I'm not doing it as beautifully as he did, and he did the whole drash just about this verse, because we have in this, I will be hidden. So the translation here is not going to the shoresh as much, which I'm doing in order to emphasize this. The Hebrew is repeating the shoresh of Yastireni beseter. That's the same shoresh. So he will hide me, he will hide me in the hiddenness. So in the Hebrew, it's repeated. He will hide me in the hiddenness of ohelo, of his tent. Ohel is a tent, or a temporary shelter. It's ohel doesn't have the sense of a built house like the other, but it means in his shelter, which is what a sukkah feels like, right? So he will, and on a bad day, God will keep me hidden in his tent. It's a very, very beautiful image to imagine this 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old gay boy thinking the hiddenness the hiddenness is not isolated. It's God's with him in that hiding. But Tsur is a very interesting word, and it has a very interesting history. Tsur is a rock, and it's used sometimes as a reference to God in Jewish philosophy or thought, that God itself is a rock, a sense of security, kind of like the opposite of an ohel, of a temporary shelter. A tsur is something very, a rock. A rock is solid, is secure. And for instance, when the rabbis wanted to have a prayer for the state of Israel in the very beginning of the state, and the state was then a very secular place, and nobody would allow in the early years of the state a prayer to have the word God in it. If you can only imagine, Yael, can you only imagine Israel to not want to use the word God?
I can imagine.
What? Yeah, because of your part. But the official prayer for the state of Israel, the compromise is the word Tsur would be used for God instead of Elohim or Yud He Vav He. So for those in the chorus and know this, the prayer for the state of Israel, which we sing, is Tsur Yisrael. The prayer starts Tsur Yisrael, which is the rock of Israel. And everybody could agree that's a compromise reference to God. Tsur Yisrael is a reference to God, but it is a natural reference. But that's why some of you know, later on, added to that was Avinu Shabashamayim. That's not part of the original prayer. So Avinu Shabashamayim means our parent or our Father in heaven. But that's why in the CBST Siddur, now this is trivia. Marsha Melnick might remember this. This is serious trivia. Ayelet Cohen and I not argued with each other, but discussed this a great deal for when we put the prayer for the state of Israel in the CBSC Siddur, we wanted to indicate that Avinu Shabashamayim is not part of the original prayer, but when CBST sings it, we use a setting that uses Avinu Shabashamayim. So we wanted to have that in the Siddur. So if you look at the CBST prayer book, and this is real CBST trivia, we put Avinu Shabashamayim in parentheses to indicate it was added later than the original text. So when we sing it, and I can't sing, but those of you in the chorus remember that we sing Avinu Shabashamayim, Sur Yisrael B'Goalo, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The Avinu Shabashamayim is not the original, but Sur is part of, okay, I'm going to stop. And that word is for height or lifting up. So he will lift me high on a rock. So in other words, from being hidden and protected by God, God will ultimately raise me high on a rock. So let me stop there and see if there are any comments or questions, Harold.
Okay. A lot of people are going on Ma'oz Sor at Hanukkah, and Ma'oz is actually in line 1 of this psalm. Ma'oz, let's see.
Right, Ma'oz. So remember, Oz means strength. Like Oz, English-speaking New Yorkers know the Oz Moving Company is an Israeli moving company, and for them it's Oz, which means strong. Ma'otzur, how strong is the rock, the source?
And Adonai Tzuri V'Goali, another use of. And then I was wondering, is it a reference to the passage in Exodus where Moses asks to learn God's name, and God says, I can't show you my face, but I can hide you in the cleft of a rock. And
it's I'm not sure which is referring to which, because I'm not sure we know which came first, but we'll see, and also in the Psalms, this idea of being hidden by God and God's presence being hidden or God's presence being visible is not very common, but it is not uncommon reference to a relationship with God.
Karen Kropp has her hand up.
Yeah, I find the language here, the Yastireni Beseter, very, very moving, when you look back at the 4th verse, which when we were talking last week about what people were hearing when they looked at the 4th verse, the Achat Shalti verse, there was a lot of, in the house of, as though it were a physical place, right? Like CBST, or in the house of. And to me, like when you look at the 4th verse after the preceding verses and the context there, it's all about how the world is raging around you with war and bad people and sort of bad things that are going to happen. And in the 4th verse, we're talking about like not the physical safety of God's house, but the sort of emotional safety of God's house, this place where you can be safe when the world is raging around you. And this idea that after, coming after that is in a sort of secret, quiet place where I can be safe. And it's really moving.
I find it very moving too. And you'll see it connected when we get to line, 9, Tet. We have the famous line, Al taster panecha mimeni. Don't hide your face from me. This is the line that Debbie Friedman sets for her song. Al taster, there's that shoresh again. Don't hide your face from me. I find that very moving, connected back to what we're looking at now.
Stephen Deem has his hand up.
Hi there, good morning.
Good morning.
I'd like to talk about the word to hide and what came up for me. And it's coincidental because yesterday was my father's birthday. And my father was born in the Lower East Side of New York, and his first language was Yiddish. But he was an American. He was born here, but his English referred me to this psalm because if I get something new or something that was precious, he'd say, "Go hide it."
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. I've never heard that.
You never heard that?
I've never heard that. Has anybody else had that experience?
Put something away in Yiddish to protect it.
Huh.
Wow.
What would you say in Yiddish? I don't know Yiddish.
I don't know. I'd have to think about that.
Mm,
We
okay.
need to ask a real Yiddishist. I'm an amateur.
Okay.
All right.
I'm
No.
a dilettante in a lot of things. Yiddish is one of them. So I don't know.
At any rate, that comes up for me.
That's
Hide is to
interesting.
protect, means
Yeah.
to protect, to save. It's very
Beautiful. That's beautiful, Stephen.
We have a few comments in chat about Yeromimeni, which here seems to be to physically raise someone high upon a rock, but which also has that metaphorical use.
It definitely has a, whoops.
Sorry.
It definitely can be metaphorical, but it's to raise up is used in all different ways. I don't know if, what about in modern Hebrew? Our modern Hebrew speakers?
Romamu, the stool.
Yep.
The synagogue, yep, it's from the same word. It's from the psalm in the psalm for Shabbat, not for Shabbat, from Kabbalat Shabbat. Exactly. That's where they get Romamu from for the synagogue. But
Betsy Immershine has her hand up.
Morning. So I'm struck.
Morning.
I'm struck. Unlike many other verses, it feels like there's tremendous movement in this psalm. We go from hiding to high on a rock, and I'm just wondering if you could speak to that a little bit. Some of your thoughts about what.
And you'll see in this psalm a lot. There's a lot of contrast. It's very beautiful, and that's part of what makes this psalm, I think, so powerful for this season. It's a lot about, we'll see it, and even looking at the next verse, we have the second word of the next verse, Yarum, is the same shoresh as Romamini. Ata Yarum Roshi, now my head is high. That's the same, that sense of the contrast between being sunk low or in hiding and being able to be emerge from that. We'll see it over and over again.
But am I incorrect? But it seems that that kind of shift within one verse is not what we've been seeing that much up until now. It seems much faster, these contrasts. We've seen it, at least
That's interesting. Certainly, when you study biblical Hebrew, biblical parallelism in poetry can be, the second phrase can increase the intensity of the first phrase, and we've seen a lot of examples of that. It can just be kind of an explication of the first half, or it can be the inverse of the first half. It can be kind of the opposite. So you do see that. I agree that up until now, mostly we haven't. This is not unknown at all in biblical poetry, though, that where the second phrase is a contrast to the first phrase of the same verse. But it is certainly very powerful.
Thank you.
And you can see why that verse for Mikey Goldstein as a boy, he would just, he spoke when he spoke at CBA, he would just keep repeating that verse to himself. That was kind of his mantra. And the resolution of the tension of the first half of the verse in the second half is very satisfying that way. It will happen that I will be raised up.
Leslie Bernstein raises a Latin and Christian reference that Peter was Petrus, and Petrus is also rock. And so when it says, super hanc Petrum, upon this rock I shall found my church because your name is Peter. A rock as the foundation of the Christian church.
Fascinating. I bet you we could do a lot of study about as rock is probably up there with hills and rivers as places that are considered holy. I mean, think of Dome of the Rock. Right. The rock that's in the Dome of the Rock has profound meaning for Jews and Jews and Muslims.
And Marcia suggests in a similar line, the rock symbol is not exactly a mountain, but it reminds me of the earlier Psalms where we talked about mountains made of rock.
Absolutely. That sense of, the sense of stability, the sense of, being rooted in the earth and of strong. It's certainly a powerful image.
And right. Ira says that Ira has an operatic thing. He says he's thinking of in Die Valkyrie, when Wotan lays Brunhilde high on a rock. surrounded by fire to protect her.
Beautiful.
Wow. Okay. And Benjamin Shaffron has his hand up.
Okay.
Good morning. Rabbi,
Good morning.
I would speak to the idea that the thrust of the psalm seems to be complete trust in the deity and a sense of driving fear away. But verse 4 seems to really be foreign to that, different from that entire thrust. It seems like an insertion of something different. I wonder if you have some thoughts about it.
You know what, let's look at let's finish the psalm, because a lot of these questions will be embedded in our discussion of the overall psalm. And let's work our way through the overall psalm. Let's get there. I think it's a very, very important point. Let's see what the rest of the psalm does too. So Benjamin, would you hold on to that?
Sure. Thank
Good.
you.
Karen Brody has her hand up.
Okay.
Just one, I know you want to get on, and I'm sorry
It's okay.
I'm going to stop you.
Yeah.
But I have a problem. Someone before had talked about being told to hide something when he got something new. And it seems to me that when we are in danger, this psalm is telling us God will protect us. God will hide us. We have our safety with God. But when something joyous happens, we shouldn't want to hide it. And God wants us to enjoy in a full heart and openness in the world, it would seem, rather than, don't show it. It's dangerous to show what is happy and good.
Well, I don't know. I think it's a pretty Jewish thing to be worried that if something good happens, something bad will happen.
Well, yeah.
Think about the poo, throwing salt over your shoulder.
But is that God, Rabbi? I mean, it seems.
Well, I think it's Jewish. I don't know if it's God. I think Jews are and a lot of cultures, by the way, it's not just Jewish culture. You don't brag about your kids because you invoke the evil eye. You don't want your kids, you don't want to brag about too many good things. It invokes the evil eye. So I'm not sure it's God. I think it's Jew. A lot of cultures have that thing that if you are too, so I don't think that it's about God. I think culturally we Jews have developed this idea of throughout history of, listen, I've heard of, people, Eastern European grandparents, if a kid, just think about what you know about Eastern Europe. You did not brag about stuff. That's not considered good. You don't show off things in Eastern European Jewish culture. I don't know about other cultures as much. And, there's always a kinahara. If something good would happen, always a kinahara in Eastern European Jewish culture. All right, let's go on to line 6. Let's see if we can get through line 6.
Okay.
It's very connected to line 5. So, Yael, would you read it, please?
Sure. ועתה ירום ראשי על אויביי סביבותיי ואזבחה באוהלו זבחי תרועה. אשירה ואזמרה לאדוני.
Okay, so let's go through the Hebrew. Ve'ata, now. Ata with an ayin means now. Ata with an aleph means you. Totally different words, no relationship. And beginning Hebrew folks often confuse that because we don't pronounce either the aleph or the ayin in modern Hebrew. Totally different words, not related, no connection. So ata with an ayin is now. Now here we have yarum. It's the same shoresh that we had. Now my head, roshi, rosh like Rosh Hashanah, roshi, my head. Again, the e ending, this rhythm of the e ending at the end of roshi, my head. Resh Aleph Shin is the and Jacob Nimi, are you on the call now? I'm not sure if Jacob Nimi is here, but
yes, I am.
So you want to say something about the tom above the shin there?
Oh, hold on. I'm forgetting the name of it. It is a pausal trope, but I'm not calling the name off the top
And it's a
of my
big
head.
one. It's a
I
big
think
one.
it's pazer.
It might be called something different in the
The Psalms. It might be a
yeah.
different.
Psalms.
But anyway, it's a big one. It's a very interesting. It's a big emphatic one. So Roshi, my head. So it's a little pausal, as he said. So now my head will be lifted. So al oivai. Now another word for enemies, oyev. We've seen this before. Over my enemies, sivivot tai. So Sivivon, everybody knows the song for Hanukkah, is a dreidel. Sivivon is just the modern Hebrew word for a dreidel, meaning a turning top. Saviv is to go around. So this is then ve'ezbecha, a zevach is a sacrifice. I will sacrifice be'ohalo. So again, we have the word for tent. In his tent, zivchei, the same shoresh as ezbecha, sacrifices of truah. Truah is the sound you might remember that word from sounding the shofar. It's one of the notes for the sounding of the shofar. Truah. It's the name of the rabbinic human rights organization, Truah. It's a musical sound. It's a shouts here. They use trouts or what's the word for what a horn does? Whatever a horn does, blasts or something. Ashira, I will sing. Shir is the shoresh for song. I will sing. The azamra, zemer. This is the same. So we have here the two words for song or poem or definitely musical. So we have, that's where Zmirot, the word for Zmirot, or any word related to Zamir chorale. And of course, Mizmor LeDavid, the whole sense of what a psalm is, same shoresh, 2 Yud He Vav He. So this translation, now my head will be raised high above my enemies round about. Interesting, don't know exactly how to understand that. I will sacrifice in his tent. Sacrifices with shouts and with song and with singing and with chanting a hymn, all these different, we'll look at how different people translate it. All right, I think we have time for one more line.
Rabbi, could I just ask you a little grammatical thing?
Sure.
Pronounce this word.
Ve'oholo.
Okay, but what are the, aren't those vowel markings that generally give us the ah sound and not the o sound?
All right, now you're asking an advanced grammatical question. So I'll do this very briefly now, but it's a very good question. The patach, which is what the name of this vowel is pronounced ah in certain situations, but when it's a closed syllable, it gets the aw sound. Israelis sometimes do it. It is maintained in some words for Israelis, but in general, it's lost. But there are some words that Israelis will still maintain, even though they don't recognize they're doing it. It's fun to listen to Israelis, but sometimes they will still pronounce it. But I don't know, would you have done that with this? Yeah, El, I didn't listen
Totally, I said oholo.
Yeah.
And it's a kamatz, not a patach.
Oh, kamatz, right, sorry.
So it's called a kamatz katan.
Exactly.
I don't know why katan, but it sounds like an o instead of an a.
Yeah, so kamatz katan, and that's a whole universe of grammar. When the kamatz is a kamatz katan, when it's pronounced the a instead of the a. But so Yael would have pronounced that with an a. Wow.
There is actually a kibbutz around the Sea of Galilee called Ohalo. Oholo. That's the name of it. His tent.
But we can spend time for those who are interested in the kamatz katan. That is a whole universe. And our laners, you'll hear the laners sometimes get it and sometimes don't. But but I don't think that most Israelis study it. It's just they know some words are pronounced that way. They wouldn't be able to talk about the grammar of it. But like Americans, we can't talk about grammar.
And Sulin points out very correctly in chat that if you look carefully in some texts, many prayer books, the kamatz katan has a longer little tail on it than the
in
regular.
order to indicate when the pronunciation is different.
And Rabbi report says, look at kol, which looks like it should be pronounced kal, but it's always pronounced kol. And if under kol you see that little line, it means that they're doing it. Look, you can look for it other places.
Yeah, it's kind of a cheat sheet. It's kind of so that people who don't know it grammatically will know how to read it by looking at it.
Yes.
All right, actually, we have another one of them in this verse. Would you read this verse, Yael?
שמע אדוני קולי, אקרא וחונני וענני.
So choneni is a good example of that also, where the kamatz katan is pronounced with the oh sound. So here, Shema Yud He Vav He. This is a command to God. I love it. This is a command to God. Listen, God, koli, to my voice. Listen, my voice is ekra, is calling out, future tense, v'choneni. This is the word for mercy or compassion or in that range, or gentleness, I would say. V'choneni, and be gentle with me. V'aneni, and answer me. This is the word for answer me. Okay, maybe, Harold, are there comments, or can I do the 8? Can I do 8? We'll get
Solomon has had her hand up for about 10 minutes now.
Who has?
Linda Solomon.
Okay, Linda.
I just want to go back to 6 once more, because you said we don't know how to understand roundabout, but
we'll see. There are a lot of different ways to understand it. There isn't one.
Right.
Go ahead.
But when I saw that, immediately what came to my mind was a picture of Indians and surrounding the wagons. And
it definitely has a sense of being surrounded by.
Yeah, right. So I felt that if I'm in the middle of all of my enemies, then they're all around me, then God will come between us, my enemies and myself, and protect me.
Aha, beautiful.
So that's how I interpreted that.
Beautiful. We'll see a lot of different translators go at that in little different ways, but there is a sense of surrounding. The question is, yeah, okay, we'll get to that when we look at the different translators. All right, let's do 8.
לך אמר ליבי בקשו פניי, את פניך אדוני אבקש.
These are just the most gorgeous lines, I think. To you, lecha, to you, amar libi, my heart says, bikshu panai. Levakesh or bakash is a request or a seeking. Well, that word is a very important word for this psalm. Bakshu panai, seek my face. Et panecha, your face, Yud He Vav He, I will seek. Wow, I find this very powerful. All right, let's do 9, and then we'll end for today. As we're getting very. So, would you read this one too? Because these all go together.
אל תסתר פניך ממני, אל תת באף עבדך, עזרתי היית. אל תיטשני ואל תעזבני, אלוהי ישעי.
So a lot of these words should be familiar to us. So al taster, don't hide panecha, your face. This is the Debbie Friedman line here. Don't hide your face mimeni, from me. Al tat ba'af. Af literally means nose, but I think we've come across this before, that the reference to af can mean anger because of, I think, flared nostrils, the idea of anger. Avdecha, ezrati hayita. Don't push aside in anger, avdecha, your servant. Ezrati, you have been. Ezra is help. Ezrati, my help. Hayita, you have been. So there, by the way, is the verb to be in Hebrew, hayita. So you have been my help. Al titsheni, don't forsake me. Don't push me aside. V'al ta'azveni, and don't abandon me. Very powerful word. Don't abandon me. This is the root of the word that Jesus says on the cross, by the way. Don't abandon me, God. Al ta'azveni, don't abandon me. Elohai Yishi. Elohai, my God. Yishi, my Savior, my Saver, my Redeemer, my Deliverer. Again, the same word that we saw in the first verse. All right. Well, we made a lot of progress today through line 9, and tomorrow we'll finish through 14.
And we will end back with Adria Benjamin.
Wow, Adria, that's just gorgeous. Thank you. And thank you, all of you who dedicated our study today in memory of somebody you loved and lost. And Harold, we're thinking about you and your brother.
Thank you.
Blessings to everybody. The room will stay open for a little bit, and we continue tomorrow together. Thank you all for being on this incredible journey together. It's so deeply moving. Love to all.
Thank you.